What's going on, Sugabear? I understand what you're saying, but here's the problem. To understand African American history, you have to dig deep and hard. Most of the information that's presented about African American history come from white sources. So all they're going to tell you about is civil rights, and all they're going to talk about is slavery. And even when they do talk about slavery and civil rights, they're not going to give you the nitty gritty. When we talk about civil rights, most people only know about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. If we talk about slavery, we don't really know the details and the connection it had to Africa. So the problem is, no one's going to present that information to you, and they're not going to fill in the gaps that you were talking about in terms of what about all the stuff in between. Quite frankly, everything is kind of related, so you can't necessarily learn about the in-betweens without understanding slavery and civil rights, but no one's going to teach it to you. And then there's a moving effort as well, like the school I went to, there's a moving effort to cut out African American studies. Before, it was a whole department. Now they've consolidated it with cultural studies or ethnic studies. So all of a sudden, the fact that you can major in African American studies at the school I went to, you can only minor in it now, because they have removed the program. So the information, and here's what a lot of people don't understand, a lot of the information is not in textbook form, right? A lot of the information that you seek is literally on some hand to mouth. I took a great African American studies, I took a couple, but I took one African American studies class, and we didn't even have a textbook. He just had Xeroxes of information he got from various sources. He played cassette tapes, not even CDs, but cassette tapes of presentations that go back as far as 1960 and 1950. So the history, a lot of it is raw. A lot of it isn't in textbook format where you can go to Barnes and Nobles and pick it up. Because a lot of our history in terms of America is very raw. So the problem with African American history is that it's a direct reflection on white America. So there is a push on white America's end to kind of phase out the whole idea of slavery and the whole idea of civil rights by pushing it to the side, by cutting funding from African American programs so that, America as a whole can move on from it, quote unquote. Because to talk about African American history is to shed light on the brutality of white America, and white America does not want that to happen. So quite frankly, if you really want to know what's going on, you just have to get on your grind. Literally, you have to get information wherever you can. Especially YouTube is a great source. Conversations with older black folks. I met some black folks, older cats who came from where was it, Oklahoma, and they were talking about their life in the 40s and the 50s. So it's really on some dynamic type of education. There's no one source that's going to help you fill in the gap. We can't rely on the universities to teach our education because they're the leading power in terms of trying to erase the whole idea of the brutal African American history in America. And quite frankly, if you truly want to know what's going on with African American history, you have to go back to Africa. I don't like how people want to make a cutoff between African American history and African history, right? Because to be real, African American history starts at slavery. There is no before, because if you're talking about before, you have to go back to Africa. So I don't know. I would love to hear what you have to say about this, but I understand where you're coming from, but like I said, if you really try to know what's going on in African American history, you really have to get your hands dirty, and you have to use as many sources as you can, because there's a movement on an institutional level to cut down the focus on African American history, and they're trying to change African American history into regular American history. So take it easy. God bless.